Hi, everyone. I bet you didn't expect to see Peter the Great. No way. St. Petersburg and Peter the Great, that can't be, right? Never happened. It's always about Peter the Great because apart from, well, establishing the city, he established many other things along the way. And the Academy of Fine Arts was not established by Peter the Great, but the understanding that there would be and there was a need for artists came at that time. But before establishing the academy and many other institutions, there had to be established the city. And I believe it's just pure coincidence that the Fine Arts Academy was built on that island, one of the most favorite islands of St. Petersburgers, and the island that Peter the Great had long plans. I would say very long-term plans. This is the Vasilyevsky Island or Basil Island. From this photo, you can see it is an island, and you can see it's pretty big. This is the biggest one out of 40 something islands that we have, and it has well, uh, has quite an interesting shape. Of course, the original island looks a little different, and the shape was a little different, but it's still the natural island. And in this photo, you can see that in the end, behind the island, there's also a stretch of water that's already the Gulf of Finland. So from Vasilyevsky Island is basically the best way to reach the Gulf of Finland. And if you sail from the Gulf of from the Neva River, you can sail to the left, you can sail to the right, because exactly at the spit of the Basil Island, Neva splits into two armlets, and both these armlets eventually flow into the Gulf of Finland. So that island, strategically located just at the entrance, the bottleneck to St. Petersburg, the city itself. So it became the first port, the first transportation hub, one of the first docks. Uh, also for military ships would be located exactly here. And Peter the Great had really big plans to make this island into something more than just a now it's just I would say, beautiful tourist site. We've been there with you multiple times. I've guided there, I would say, gazillion of times, and I'm sharing some photographs from my guiding time, early pandemic times. And yeah, this is the symbol of the city. These columns, we call them rostral columns simply because they are decorated with their rostrums, right, of the ships, like noses of the ships. But originally, they actually had a function of lighthouse. They looked a little different. The first ones were pretty, I would say, simple, but they had the same function. You see from the maps, these are just the very beginning of St. Petersburg, 1705. 2 years prior to that, the city was established amidst the Great Northern War already. But you can see how much bigger the Basil Island was. And in this map, you can easily define it, and you can see that it all has lines, right? That's because Peter the Great wanted to make it into a small Amsterdam, like Russian Amsterdam. He wanted to dig the canals, and instead of streets, people would have to sail. So there would not be streets, there would be just lines and canals, which would have been a disaster because, St. Petersburg uh, used to have floods every year, just once every year. Actually more than once, but the biggest ones would happen once a year. Imagine what the situation, well, would have been had there been canals. No, it's absolutely out of question. So that plan never really worked. They started digging canals. Peter passed away in 1725, so that they never went with it. But with everything else, they did. And Peter had the idea and he actually managed to bring a lot of ministries, a lot of official institutions to move them to, first of all, to move them from Moscow to St. Petersburg and to locate them, to place them exactly on the Basil Island. Now, this embankment that we are going to walk along towards the Academy of Fine Arts, which is like 10 minutes walk maximum, but because it's a video, it's going to be even faster than that. It's now called University Embankment, but it used to have different names in the past. But university, because we're going to pass by the university and many other important institutions along the way. For example, this is zoological museum. There's also a research facility where they study zoology, and this is just one of the institutions that were established originally by the way, at times of Peter the Great. But it didn't look the same way though. Now, another institution that was established by Peter the Great, but this building is from the second half of the 18th century, the Kunstkamera, right? The Museum of Curiosities, the Chamber of Curiosities, the first public museum that was opened in the country, established by Peter the Great. The core of the collection is Peter's collection of curiosities that he brought from his travels. And by the way, I have done a virtual tour of Kunstkamera. I think we had several episodes, so there are a lot of weird exhibits there. But well, from this embankment, you can see also the other side of the Neva River, the other shore. You see the Palace Bridge. You see the Winter Palace, right? The Hermitage Museum, right across the river. And this video was filmed in January this year because the days the door open is every January. I don't remember the exact day, but that's the tradition. So only once a year. And I know that, and Oleg also shared with me, there were long lines. Everybody wanted to come. Everybody wanted to see the embankment, well, the academy. So there were a lot of people. There were a lot of bloggers. There were a lot of tour guides who just wanted to seize this chance to see how everything works in the academy. And well, so it's pretty crowded. And it has always been crowded. The amazing thing is that this island, with all these institutions, for example, this is the building, this is the headquarters of the Russian Academy of Sciences. It used to have its, well, since St. Petersburg used to be a capital up until 1918, so the headquarters of the academy used to be in St. Petersburg. Now it's in Moscow, but the building still belongs to the academy and is used by the academy. As I said, Peter brought institutions, so political institutions. For example, this is the building of 12 collegia or 12 ministries. We don't really have the exact year, let's say when St. Petersburg was proclaimed the capital of the empire, but we consider it's like 1713, 1714, because these are the years when the ministries, when the 12 fundamental important ministries were moved from St. Petersburg, from Moscow to St. Petersburg. So that's how this was. The Green Building, originally, it looked a bit different, but it's still the same building. It was the palace to Peter II. I'm not sure that you remember who Peter II was, but he was the only legitimate grandchild or grandson of Peter the Great, because if you remember, Peter the Great had many kids, but they were either daughters or they were born before he got officially married. And he only had one son from the first marriage, and from that son, whom Peter killed later, further on, Tsarevich Alexei. So his son survived. So he was a teenager when his time to rule came, and obviously he didn't rule. There were other people who ruled instead of him, and used obviously the let's say the naivety of Peter II, and he mainly partied 24/7, got ill, and passed away about when he was around 16 or 15 years old. And further on in this building was opened the university. So St. Petersburg University was born on the Vasilevsky Island as well. And this is now the philology department where Misha, my husband, studied. Now, this building, well, from here you can see it. I don't really think I ever had a chance to share it with you, but if you have a look from here, you will see that this building looks very small and narrow, but it actually goes along deep into the quarter. This is the horse riding manege that belonged to the army, to one of the army regiments, Life Guards regiment. It's pretty long, actually, it's longer than that even. And this building has all these buildings, by the way, have been here since the 18th century. This embankment is one of the oldest. It's just as old the embankment along which the Winter Palace was constructed. Well, now um, it's one of the facilities, one of the research facilities. So this is the old photograph. You can see that the buildings are pretty much the same. They look a little different, but they're pretty much the same. This is I believe, the end of the 19th century. Not sure the exact year. And well, that's the building you know very well, Palace of Alexander Menshikov. We have been there on a virtual tour. I remember I called it the unofficial Delft-tile museum. I don't know if Natalie is here. Natalie is our fellow seasoned viewer from the Netherlands, so but she would have remembered probably. So in this, Alexander Menshikov was a good friend of Peter the Great, and he also had unlimited funds, and he was the first one to build a residential building on an island right next to all those academy ministries, and he decorated his kitchen with Delft tiles from the floor to the ceiling. So this the genuine original Delft tiles outside of the Netherlands can be found in I would say in abundance in this palace. Yeah, and now it's by the way one of the branches of the Hermitage Museum, so the palace can be visited. Unlike the Academy of Fine Arts that we are about to visit very soon, but it's way more than that. So, it's not just the building itself, it's the sphinxes, which I'm sure you remember from my tours. It's the area itself, it's how beautiful the Neva River looks. It's the, obviously, yeah, a couple of selfies. Yeah. It's also the statue of Catherine the Great on top. So it's like an ensemble. So I cannot just talk about the academy and say nothing about the sphinxes, which are 3,500 years old. They came from Egypt in the 19th century, at the time while it was still possible to buy uh, some Egyptian antiquities at a obviously very high price, but well, and Russia seized that opportunity. Obviously, once those sphinxes emerged and were placed by the academy building, a lot of stories, you know, a lot of strange things started to happen, and I did share them on my Halloween tours, both live during the Hago times and also on pre-recorded tours. So I'm not going into this, but this area is scenic. The views are scenic. The and no wonder a lot of I believe that this was the best location for the academy because only just the views themselves are good enough to inspire artists to create something, right? Well, you just look out of the window on a regular day, and then you see the sun, and then you see the St. Isaac's Cathedral on the other side of the river, and this gilded dome reflecting the sunlight. Okay, sunlight is rare in the city, but still, still possible. You can, if you're lucky enough, you can catch with some sunlight in the city. Well, I mean, just this is already infinite source of inspiration. Obviously, there are a lot of paintings, student works, examination, works done by students and other artists. So this area has always been incredibly attractive, for plein air painting and so on. So these are the paintings either made by students of the academy, mainly in the 19th century, or the professors. So there you go. And the official name, however, of the academy is the Academy. Well, it used to be called the Imperial Academy of Arts, obviously, but now it's like the Russian State Academy of Arts, and it's named after Ilya Repin, whom I will be talking about later on. And this name might ring a bell to you because I have done quite a number of tours on this artist. But let's focus on the building itself. Let's focus on the academy, its activity, the study process, and just the vibe. I used to teach at a university at my alma mater. I used to teach. I did that for several years, so I remember that vibe, the vibe of the campus life, student life, and it's incredible, and it kind of I was able to feel something similar to what I used to feel back in the day. But let's first of all take a look at this drone photo. It's not my photo, I just found it online. I mean, look at this building. It's huge. It's gigantic. It's like four buildings within one building. It has four courtyards. One of them is the big courtyard where, where a lot of plein air sessions are also carried out. And in that courtyard, you can move around, and it's circular, and you can move around, just follow the sun and the sunlight as it changes its position during the day. So every courtyard has a certain function. Every corner of the building has a certain function, but look how gigantic it is. And you can also see the statue on top. That's Catherine the Great, because of actually, it was Catherine the Great. So during her reign, the academy was established. Well, it was established before during Elizabeth, but the building was built, and let's say the heyday of the academy started during Catherine's rule. That's the second half of the 18th century. And on the opposite side, there was a small dome. That's the church that we are also going to drop by, which is a very, very rare opportunity, honestly, very rare opportunity. So this is just the day doors open. So I think it's still Sunday or Saturday, so definitely it's a weekend. That's another monument to Catherine the Great. And I would say that during the week there are definitely a lot more people, a lot more students, but other than that, it's pretty much the same. So this is this round courtyard. You see a monument there. So that is the monument, obviously made by students. Monument to Ivan Shuvalov, who was the first, let's say, curator, and the manager, and the patron, and the head of the academy, Ivan Shuvalov. So he was an aristocrat, very close to Catherine the Great. She trusted him immensely. So he was in charge of the academy. He was in charge of during even the construction of the academy, because again, as I said, it was during Catherine's time when the building was finished, was completed, and the building has not been changed ever since. So obviously, it has been restored, but it's still the same steps, it's still the same rooms, and it feels like you are in a really old building. Well, okay, it's just a bit less than 300 years old. It's not really that much, but it's still quite a lot. It's just not all the rooms were open, just a few rooms were open. You could see the original. And these are the 18th century stoves. Okay, they could have looked a little better. Now you have the idea. Another stove. on the walls you see some sketches of the students or some portraits of some distinguished professors. These are just the rooms, so the lecture rooms. There are many of them, big ones, small ones. So obviously, well, on that day, there was no classes, but it's also from what I understood, there were arranged some sort of workshops and some lectures for anyone. Also, if let's say 11th grader, 12th grader, I mean, from school are considering becoming artists and trying to be accepted to the academy, they could come, they could ask questions, they could talk to teachers, they could talk to instructors, and get a consultation on the admissions process and everything. So that's what this day is for. Just one day. So that's, as I said, an exhibition of the students. I guess it's just different works. You see, I don't really see one theme there. It's back in the days, back in the when the academy was established. It's important to mention that why there was this necessity first and foremost. I mean, it's clear to us, but nevertheless, so there was no really school of art, and I think it's a good idea that I'm stopping exactly at this moment when we have a portrait of probably Our Lady, right? So something. Um, there was no one who could simply draw a portrait of a monarch. There were some artists. I don't mean to say that there were no artists, but their art was quite primitive. Not as primitive as the medieval art, obviously, but it was pretty primitive anyway. And they were self-taught artists, so there was no school of art. There were no standards, and that's why Peter, after his trips to Europe, he obviously saw those artworks. He was the first one to start collecting art. He was the first one who brought Rembrandt to the country. So he realized the necessity, the absolute necessity of establishing the art school. But I guess Peter just had so many other things to handle that he just didn't have time for the Fine Arts Academy. This is the church building. I have never been inside, and also from what I was told, that the church is not open on a daily basis. It is usually opened just a couple of days a week. So it was a rare opportunity to visit the church, and of course, all the designs, all the plasterwork decoration, all the paintings of the Last Supper and everything, it was all done by the students of the academy. So I guess at least they managed to save up on the decoration work, I would say, in the church, just because the work was done by by the students. I think so. I'm not entirely sure. And well, it it was done in a nice way. We have some old photographs too. The lovely thing to me is that the it's not only the building that it's still the same. It was never really damaged. So there was some minor damage during the Second World War times, uh, but well, okay, maybe some broken windows. Yeah, that's sure. But the church wasn't harmed, and the people, by the way, many professors and students used the church. They used the academy building as a shelter. Some some teachers, some professors, they they decided to move to the academy, and they lived in the academy. The main reason was, there was no public transport. And imagine, you are in the besieged city, right? There's no public transport, there's no electricity, it's cold winter, and you need to walk. And there's no food in the city. There's very, very scarce, ratio. that you have, provided that you have special cards, and you need to buy this food. It's not given to you for free. So just imagine how dangerous it was just to leave a home and walk all the way to the academy. There was a risk of just being hit by a rocket, right? There was the, well, by a bomb, not the rocket, but the bomb. There was a risk just to collapse from fatigue and hunger and just freeze to death. So many professors decided to move and live in the academy building. Now, uh, well, you've seen how many wings that there are, how many floors and everything. The views, uh, the views. So the windows, light were absolutely essential, obviously. So that's why there are so many windows. And also from what we were told, there were also about dozens of different studios established, built in the city in the end of the 18th century and early 19th century, like big studios with big windows, and they also belonged, like by documents, they also belonged by the academy. So the light was absolutely essential. The canteen, it's just the canteen, and it's the same canteen. I wasn't able to find photographs from the 19th century, so I guess this one is the early 20th century canteen. That's so it's the same room. Well, probably the furniture is different, the faces are different, but it's still the same canteen. There was a canteen for students, and there was the canteen for the teachers. These are already the photograph from Soviet period. This is canteen for the teachers. You see that, well, the room looks a little bit more ornate. There's more beautiful furniture over it, but I haven't seen the the cupboard, so I guess it's just gone. And in one wing, yes, there is a museum that is filled with plastic casts for the big sculptures, paintings, sketches, other kinds of art. You can find them in that wing. Remember, I said that the academy now is officially named after Ilya Repin, who was an outstanding 19th and 20th century artist. He was also an art professor, and he represented the realism movement, and he also represented the um, the community of artists called the itinerants or the peredvizhniki. He was one of the trailblazers in this regard because, well, before that, well, everyone had to come to St. Petersburg or Moscow to see artworks. And obviously, the number of people that would come to St. Petersburg and Moscow to see art was negligible. There were not so many people who could afford that. There were not so many people who were interested or even knew of such an opportunity because they lived thousands of miles away from the academy. So the itinerant community and Yaropin himself, they designed this new approach. That's why they're called itinerants. Every year they would travel across the country exhibiting their works. That gave them, well, publicity. They had more contact with the clients. They had better reach and more clients and more purchases. Plus, Ilya Repin was a very good teacher, so he had hundreds and hundreds of students. Once a month. Well, there was also such a thing. It's we in Russia we call it like free listeners or the visiting students. I guess that's the term. So the visiting students. So there were a lot of people who were not exactly the students of the academy, but they could attend at a certain cost. Well, they had to pay certain price. They could just attend lectures, the lectures they wanted to attend. And Ilya Repin also, by the way, that's him in his academy, in his office. He was the president of the academy as well for some time. So, and whenever he gave lectures, it was a sold out. It was packed, and he was like a celebrity. So there were always long lines, and some people just fortunately would have to stay behind the doors because there was simply no place for them. So Yeripin was an outstanding teacher and artist. I did a tour about him, by the way. So it can be accessed with the link to the playlist that my sponsors know. So the academy, as you may have noticed, in this particular room there are a lot of Soviet art works. During the Soviet time, the academy functioned as just simply the same way. It's just only that they removed the word imperial from the title of the academy. Other than that, it just remained the Academy of Arts, but they had a bit different agenda, obviously. So it's social art, social realism, and a lot of new movements were introduced, and some new departments as well. But it started with classicism. So the let's say the proper museum of the Academy of Arts starts in the on the second and the third floor. There are a lot of halls because there are a lot of let's say departments. There are a lot of faculties in the academy. But before we explore a little bit of the museum, let's explore this room, this auditorium. This is the main auditorium. I would probably just pause for a little on the ceiling so you could see it. Just give me a second. Yeah, okay, that's better. So I'm terribly thirsty, so I need to get some water. So on the ceiling, you can see the allegory of arts uh, and also muses, because, well, um, you needed inspiration, you needed the help of gods, and all the virtues and all the kinds of arts that you could find, you will see on this scene. So it's allegory of arts. And this particular room, auditorium, is the hall where the examination works are presented. That's where the theses are uh, where they defend the thesis, and also this is where the diplomas are handed out. All the certificates and diplomas are handed out, and it's always been like this. So this hall has not really been changed since the second half of the 18th century when the building was finished, and it's still the same way, which is incredible. So the Academy of Fine Arts is probably one of the most conservative institutions in the city, and I love it that it's the same benches restored, but it's the same benches. And also this tradition of putting up a Christmas tree has always been active in the museum ever since basically started. And in the portrait halls and the picture halls, you will see, of course, you will see portraits of the monarchs, because again, the first and foremost, the one of the important idea was you needed someone who would make portraits of nobility, and then this was the only way how people in the country could know how their rulers looked like, basically, so what they looked like. And these early works, you see how dark they are, but it improved. The academy would every year the academy would send best students and best graduates to Europe for internship, and the internship could last up to 2 years. and it would be done at the expense of the academy. So the academy was ready to cover for those big study trips, as long as the students, of course, uh, were happy. So here, this is the exhibit. It's in the museum. So actually, this can be touched by well, visitors with visual impairments. This is like the palette, the brushes, the also the pigments, how the pigments and dyes uh, could be could be made. So they could be made from different minerals, and you see all the necessary items, also the different samples of canvas, some sharpeners, some crayons, and things like that. So this is kind of it's so Alex said that, so that's exhibit everyone could touch. It's not, these are not old items. No, they are modern ones, but it's just a nice way to see uh, what should be there in the kit, of an artist. So here, so where the paintings came from? Many paintings, when the academy only opened, the museum was established almost immediately. By the way, so I like that visionary, so that thinking behind it, so that the academy would quite quickly need a museum. And well, first and foremost, you see here plastic casts. So those are plastic casts for different, uh, well, for sculptures. There were small models, big models, just plastic casts, and uh, some of these plastic casts you can recognize because they eventually were made um, into marble sculptures. Also, in the art section, you could find a lot of artworks. Originally, when the museum only opened, same time as the academy did, they uh, Shuvalov, so who was in charge of the academy, who was the first president of the academy, we can say so. However, it wasn't the official title at that point, but you get the idea. It was the function. He was in charge. He was on top of everything, basically. So Shuvalov donated a lot of artworks from his private collection. So did some other aristocrats. So did Catherine the Great. She also gave several artworks from her collection, which she had been, well, which she was so famous for. And also here, so what is so amazing that, of course, not all plastic casts eventually became, led to the creation of marble sculptures. And we have a rare chance to see what some of the iconic monuments of St. Petersburg could have looked like. Or let's say some of them actually were never made. So we can see what we kind of missed. From here, if we go upstairs, we'll find ourselves in another section that deals with architecture, because one of the departments, so one of the first departments, by the way, of the academy was architecture. And well, Peter needed that. Peter desperately needed architects. Peter desperately needed engineers, not only for the shipbuilding, but in general. So the courtyard. So from what I understand, it was okay. There's some restoration work going on, and also I'm not sure where that lion came from. I've never seen him. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on here. I guess it's just some repair work. So as far as I understand, some rooms, by the way, were closed because they were under reconstruction or I don't know, conservation, something like that. So that I know. So maybe it was still going on. It's still going on. This pavilion is an important one. Now we are outside. This is the pavilion for animals. So to work with animals. It wasn't just humans, it wasn't just architecture, it wasn't just sculpture. No, it was also animalist genre. And in this pavilion, well, students would call it farm, but it didn't. Well, it had nothing to do with the farm, but that was the pavilion where you could study and you could paint animals, which was a big deal. Animals needed more place, they needed time, they needed more space. You couldn't just bring a horse to the third floor of the academy building. Of course not. And there is an interesting story. So yeah, and because that pavilion was easily accessible to big animals, well, you could see horses, uh, you could see different animals. So there is a story. There is a sculptor, Peter Claude, who is famous in the city, and you have seen a lot of his works. He specialized in horses. First and foremost, he was the best when it dealt to making sculptures of horses. I don't know why, but he had it. He had it. And the some of the most iconic sculptures you can find on the Anichka Bridge that we saw last week on my tours. Uh, and Claude was not a zoologist. He spent quite a lot of time at the Zoological Museum. He spent quite a lot of time um, in the anatomy theater, just learning how the animal bodies worked, how they were built, the muscles and everything. And he was at some point, Peter Claude was given a commission to create a monument to Krylov, who was a prominent Russian writer of the 19th century. And Krylov wrote a lot of fables, like Monkey and the Glasses, and many others. And normally in these allegorical novels, so fables, there would be animals as main characters, representing humans and different features of human characters. So there were a lot of different animals there. You could see just the abundance. And Claude obviously needed real animals to see what they were like. For some, let's say to see a tiger, to see a lion, he would go to the zoo. But a goat, a donkey, and a monkey, all that he had the permission to bring to the studio. And once he brought a monkey to the studio because they also needed monkey for his work. And that monkey started stealing things. That monkey stole his brush. That monkey would hide it where he was. And that monkey she kept hiding it, and he was not even able to find it many years later. So it was a disaster. But yes, so that's what that pavilion was used for. And the amazing thing, so it's kind of called the bear house, kind of the bear sanctuary. There are no bears now. No, no, no. But there, at least up until recently, there was a small horse riding station, so to speak, where very young horses well, I'm saying there used to be because I'm not sure if it's open now because I know that several years ago it was closed and it looks like it reopened, or maybe it just reopened for one day. I'm not sure. But yes, so there was built a small house, for horses. Usually, well, horses were not there all the time. Sometimes it would be other animals that would be brought for some time again, and then they would be returned to where they were. But yes, there was a small barn in the heart of one of the courtyards of the academy. So that's really cute. And so as far as I know, at least before like 2 years ago, anyone could come and anyone could just rent this well, the pony. well, for like 30 minutes and just ride it. During the summer, um, most of the territory behind the academy is open to public. And I remember I visited it several times. Just nice. They have really nice green grass. It's not crowded because tourists normally don't go there, and you can just really enjoy the silence there. So these are photos from my camera roll. And so these pavilions, so remember I told you that during the Second World War times, a lot of professors preferred to move to the academy and live there. So on the territory of the academy, there are a lot of buildings, residential buildings too, where the professors live. So since the beginning of the academy, professors would be provided some rooms and some really decent living conditions. So it's one of those rooms. Was one of those buildings where the apartments for the teachers used to be. I don't think that anyone is living there still. That's, by the way, in this courtyard there is a monument to Peter Claude. Well, to the one who was very good with horses. And now we are going to the third floor to see a little bit of the architecture collection. So as I said, one of the first departments was architecture because Peter knew he needed architects. He needed, and by the way, he hired, well, Peter was the first one to hire teachers. So there was no academy yet at that time, at that point, but there was already the understanding that it would be necessary. So the first engineering, the first architecture topics, for the first several years would be studied just in a different building, but would be started. So here you see the plaster works. So these are the allegories of different kinds of art, fine arts, sculpture, architecture, and why I like this museum particularly because it has models. It has models of some of the St. Petersburg landmarks. By the way, these are plaster works. By the way, it's it's not the original. It's not marble, and you see it's pretty dark, so it gets darker. And uh, this is from the very beginning. That wing was built as a museum, so there were no classes here held. But here used to be a workshop there where they made models. For example, this is the model from mid 18th century, the model of the Smolny Cathedral. You may remember this cathedral from my tours. So we did go there several times uh, back in the Hago times. So that was supposed to be a monastery with a big territory, and that was supposed to be the main church. The project was so ambitious that the architect just could not finish it on time. Well, from this photo, I think you can see it. Wait, wait a second. I will just pause. Well, you see how big the territory is. It was supposed to be a monastery for Empress Elizabeth, daughter of Peter the Great, but she passed away. The architect who was appointed in charge of the construction was replaced. So the times changed, and Catherine the Great completely flipped script. Catherine hated Baroque style. Catherine liked simple lines, symmetry, so classicism, in other words. So this building was just very lucky to have been built because she could have completely canceled the project. And they were created models during the same time as the building was uh, well was being constructed. They created models, the cutaway models, just the small scale models of how everything was supposed to look like. So these are the exhibits contemporary to the same landmarks, and they're pretty big. I mean, just look at that. So this is the Smolny Cathedral, the cutaway mode, and it looks the same way. Also, with the models, we can see original ideas that were never really implemented. We can see how buildings look, let's say, before the Second World War. By the way, this bell tower was never built, but there was a big plan to build it at some point, but revolution happened and plans changed. So there is a lot to see. We can see what it could have been like, but what it could have looked like. For example, this is one of the models of St. Isaac's Cathedral, right? That I showed you the photo of. And there are many, many more models. Some buildings, by the way, are no longer with us because they were destroyed. They were damaged by the, well, Nazis during the siege. Some buildings were destroyed in some churches. There are some models of the churches that were destroyed, uh, well, by the Soviets, but the models have survived. So technically, if there is a need to build a church, well, to build a certain church that had been destroyed in the in the Soviet period, well, there technically is a way uh, to return it to uh, to to public. Let me open the chat. Everything has changed. Everything has moved. All the controls have been moved by Zoom. This is so distracting. Okay, I hope the chat is open to everyone to type in. Let me know, but it looks like it is, but I might be wrong. And I will be sharing the links once again. So I'm happy that I have been able to take you to this, I would say not easily accessible place right in the heart of the city, but there are a lot of educational institutions that unfortunately access is limited to. And I so wish it had been different, but I can understand. So they are not museums. So I'm sharing some links for tonight and for the upcoming weekend. Well, for tomorrow and the upcoming weekend, some tours are already up. And as I said, I'm hoping to travel next week a little bit for one night, basically in Georgia, and I will be scheduling a live walk from that area. I will keep you posted. I just don't want to jinx it, and I'm slightly worried about the weather because it might rain next week, but actually spring has come to Tbilisi, so I can't wait to take you on a live walking tour. But because of the patriarch's funeral this weekend, I decided just to stay on the safe side, and I don't want to get stuck in the traffic or be blocked from getting out of certain areas. So I've been there. I don't want to go there again. Don't want that. So that's why I will be taking you to the streets of St. Petersburg a little later. Sorry, not St. Petersburg, Tbilisi. Thank you so much, Maria. Yes, so I'm so happy that Oleg was able to go. Actually, I totally forgot about it. January was quite busy, so when he offered, Anna, like there is the doors open day. Do you want me to go? I said, of course. Yeah. So I'm so happy that he managed. You went to the top of the building in St. Petersburg to see many models of buildings, mainly wooden models. But it was down the road from the Hermitage. I think it was the models. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's called. No, I don't. I don't. There are two places like that. One next to the Hermitage and one in on the other end of the city. But those are new models. Those are the miniature models, like mini Israel. There's like there is Madurodam in the Netherlands, right? So these are just the miniature versions of the current landmarks, like miniature versions of Amsterdam, miniature versions of I don't know, St. Petersburg, but they are modern. Also, a lot of those models they have some features, they have lights and everything. Yes, but the models in the Academy Museum, are contemporary to the times when they built those buildings. So these are like 18th century models. But the museum you're talking about, yeah, that's modern one. That's a nice one, by the way. I I I have a license to that museum actually, and they were very happy for me to live stream from there from them. I remember from the site. I think we even agreed for a live stream, but that never happened. Don't remember why. That was really good. That's a good museum. Thank you, Maria. Yes, so it's Georgia's morning. They have made public transport free. They have blocked like 40% of the city area in the so where the son of the church is, the Trinity Church is, that's the main cathedral of the city. So it's all blocked. They blocked the road for transport. They only provided special lanes for buses. Well, there are in general special, lines for buses, but other than that, you cannot enter the area with your car, like at all. So it's just it's I would say intense here at the moment. But other than that, it's great. The spring has come, so I can't wait to take you to some areas to see some blossoms. So there are a bunch of places. There are always some new sites to explore, and I can't wait to take you to the old city to show you some of them. So yeah, I think I have shared with you quite a lot. Yes, so you have all the links. So in 2 hours from now, I will be taking you to two tours back to back to the Silk Museum in Tbilisi for the second tour. The recordings as of previous weekend are already there, by the way. I mean, they're on my YouTube. And then I'm taking you to the palace of Zinaida Yusuf. Oh, Dorley, dear, how are you? I didn't see you join. And hi, Catherine Ellen, good to see you. Thank you so much for finding time to join me. Oh, goodness. Oh, I'm so happy to see you, Dolly. Wow. Oh, oh, Sharon, I'm so sorry. Your mother was in hospital. Are you in London? That's yeah, of course it will be recorded. So just as this one, it's being recorded. So of course I see. Okay, I see. Well, I hope she feels better soon. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. I will see you in 2 hours from now for two tours. Sending you a big hug, Sharon. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. I will see you soon. Bye bye.